Don't you dare come crawling back here expecting anything from us. My sister's voice was sharp, cold, and final, like the slam of a courtroom gavel. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I just stood there, frozen on the brick steps of my townhouse in Charlottesville, Virginia, the late spring wind tugging at my coat, but I barely felt it. My hand clenched around the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned bone white. Lyra, what's going on? I asked, my voice catching in my throat. What did I do? Can we just talk? There's nothing to talk about, she snapped. You made your choice when you humiliated Mom in front of the entire family. Don't bother calling again. You're not part of this anymore. The call ended with a dull click that felt like a door slamming in my face. I stared at the screen as if it might come back to life, but all I saw was my reflection, pale, stunned, and suddenly very alone. 5 days earlier, everything had felt normal. My younger brother Zane had just graduated from UVA, and we were celebrating at a lakeside resort our family rented every summer growing up. The Sinclair name still meant something in Charlottesville. Old money, legacy connections, a lineage you were expected to protect. But that night, the fragile illusion of family unity shattered. My crime? Telling the truth. When Zane's future employer asked me what I did for a living, I gave an honest answer. I told them I was a senior accounts manager for Core Energy, that I'd helped close a $12 million deal just last quarter, and that I'd been promoted twice in 3 years. Apparently that was enough to trigger a meltdown. My mother, Meredith Sinclair, the same woman who once told me that a lady never talks about money or work at the dinner table, pulled me aside with a clenched jaw and fire in her eyes. You couldn't just say you were in consulting or something simple. Why did you have to go on and on like some glorified salesman? I remember blinking at her, confused. Because that's what I do. It's my career. Well, it made Zane look like he was still trying to catch up to his big sister, she hissed. We were building a narrative, Rowan. You wrecked it. That was the moment I realized the truth wasn't welcome in my family, not if it disrupted the fantasy. My name is Rowan Sinclair and I'm 32 years old. For the last 6 years, I've worked at Core Energy, a renewable energy company that's leading major infrastructure transitions across the East Coast. I manage client portfolios, negotiate high-stakes contracts, and oversee energy grid optimization for entire cities. But to my family, I'm just the black sheep who never married, never smiled on cue, and never played the role they assigned me. While they whispered that I probably worked in customer service or some vague business office, I had quietly built a net worth most of them couldn't imagine. I paid off my student loans by 28, bought this townhouse in full last year, and my Roth IRA looks like something out of a financial planning seminar. And yet, in the Sinclair family, none of that mattered if you didn't show up in pearls and lie through your teeth for the greater image. As I stepped back into my townhouse and shut the door behind me, the silence was deafening. It was the kind of quiet that follows a storm, not peaceful but heavy. I set my phone down on the kitchen counter and leaned against the wall, my heart still racing. What just happened? Was I really exiled from my own family? Over telling the truth? The sting of Leora's words hadn't faded. She and I used to be inseparable growing up. Sleepovers in each other's rooms, sharing secrets, borrowing clothes. But somewhere along the way she transformed into someone I barely recognized. A PR executive who spoke in press releases, whose Instagram captions were polished quotes from self-help books, and who always chose our mother's side. My stomach turned. Something about this felt too final. Too coordinated. Then just as I started to gather myself, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Urgent estate matter. Contact Alden Crest Law Group immediately regarding your role in the Sinclair Trust. I stared at the message. What? Why would a law firm be reaching out to me now, on the very same day I'd been disowned like some rebellious teenager? I reread the message twice. Sinclair Trust? I didn't even know there was a family trust. My heart pounded louder than the wind outside. I had a sinking feeling that whatever had just happened at that graduation party wasn't the full story. Not even close. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. I really did. I made chamomile tea, put on a playlist of ocean waves, and even crawled into bed with my favorite oversized hoodie. But my mind wouldn't stop spinning. The text from the law firm played on loop in my head. Contact Alden Crest Law Group immediately regarding your role in the Sinclair Trust. My role? What role? I'd never been told anything about a trust. I wasn't even invited to the last 2 family vacations. Suddenly, I'm involved in something so official a legal team is texting me on a Saturday? The next morning I was standing outside a sleek sandstone building downtown by 9:40 a.m. The sign on the door read Alden Crest, Estate and Asset Law Specialists. I was early. I didn't care. I needed answers. Inside, the lobby was modern and clinical, muted gray walls, polished floors, not a fingerprint in sight. A well-dressed receptionist with a perfect cinnamon bun hairstyle asked me to wait just a moment. "Miss Sinclair." A voice called 10 minutes later. I looked up to see a man in his early 50s, clean-cut, but with tired eyes. He wore a navy suit, no tie, and carried a folder tucked tightly under one arm. "I'm Nathaniel Clark. Thanks for coming in on such short notice. Please follow me." His office was quiet, lined with old books and newer screens. It smelled like cedar and cold printer ink. He gestured for me to sit across from his desk and I did, cautiously. "I realize this might be a bit of a shock," he began, settling into his chair. "You've been listed as the successor trustee and financial executor for the Sinclair Trust." My eyebrows lifted. "Excuse me." Nathaniel slid the folder across the desk and opened it to a set of notarized papers. "According to these documents, your late father, Richard Sinclair, designated you as the primary decision-maker for the family's estate assets in the event of incapacity, neglect, or mismanagement." I blinked, trying to absorb that. "My father's been gone for over 8 years, I said. "Why am I just hearing about this now?" "Because until recently the trust was stable," he explained. "But over the past 12 months, your mother and sister have made a series of risky financial decisions that now place the entire Sinclair estate in jeopardy. We're talking about major debt restructuring, leveraged property loans, and substantial withdrawals." "From what accounts?" asked slowly. "Retirement portfolios, property equity, and 2 private investment accounts tied to the family home in Edgemont Ridge." I felt something in my chest twist. "Wait, they mortgaged the Edgemont Ridge property?" He nodded grimly. "Twice." My stomach dropped. That house, our family home, had been in the Sinclair name for 3 generations. My grandfather built it. My father paid off the original mortgage 20 years ago. It was the only piece of real estate my family had ever protected like sacred ground. And now, it was on the line? Nathaniel continued, "Your mother hasn't responded to any of our calls or emails in weeks. As the legal successor, you now have the authority to make decisions regarding the trust, including the remaining assets, the debt liabilities, and," he paused, "whether or not to let the property go into foreclosure." I stared at him, speechless. "Miss Sinclair, I know this is a lot. But based on what we've reviewed, your mother and sister are on track to lose nearly everything. They've drained the accounts. The estate is leveraged past its limit. Without intervention, foreclosure proceedings will begin within 60 days. I shook my head. "They didn't tell me any of this." "I'm not surprised," he said. "People rarely inform the person they're hoping to quietly cut out of the picture." The weight of his words landed with a thud. Cut me out of the family, while keeping me in the legal line of fire. I sat back in the chair, my mind racing. Why would they do that? Nathaniel folded his hands. "Because you're the only one your father trusted." Silence settled between us. I thought back to my dad, to the long walks we used to take after dinner when I was younger, where he talked to me like I was already an adult. I remember him once saying, "You've got a good head for reality, Ro. You don't get distracted by drama. That'll matter one day." I just never thought that day would look like this. "What exactly am I responsible for?" I asked finally. Nathaniel opened another document. "Everything. The debt. The assets. The decisions. Technically, you have the legal right to intervene, restructure, or liquidate." He paused, then added carefully, "You also have the right to do nothing." I looked at him. "And let them lose the house?" He didn't respond. He didn't have to. That evening, back at home, I sat at my dining table surrounded by paperwork Nathaniel had given me. Mortgage records, withdrawal logs, loan agreements. The numbers were horrifying. They'd cashed out over $300,000 in retirement savings. They'd taken out 2 loans against the Edgemont house, totaling nearly $470,000. And they'd invested in a private fund with no verified licensing. No audits. No oversight. Everything about it screamed scam. And somehow I was now responsible for cleaning up the mess, if I wanted to. I stared out the window at the pink light fading over my small backyard. They cut me off to protect their pride. They lied about me to save face. But they left me the power. And suddenly, for the first time in my life, I realized just how much leverage that gave me. I didn't call ahead. I didn't text. I wanted to see their faces before they had time to rehearse a single excuse. The next morning I drove out to Edgemont Ridge, the neighborhood where I grew up, where the grass was always trimmed too short and the mailboxes were all matching black iron. I hadn't been back in over a year. Not since our mother accidentally forgot to invite me to Zane's birthday dinner. The house looked the same from the outside. Colonial, white shutters, a red brick pathway curling through a flower bed that used to be my dad's pride and joy. But the roses were overgrown now. The bushes unpruned. The paint on the porch rail had begun to flake. Something was off. I parked at the curb and walked slowly to the front steps. My old key, the one I hadn't used in years, stayed zipped in my coat pocket. I didn't even bother trying it. I rang the doorbell. It took nearly a minute before the door cracked open. Leora stood behind it, hair in a messy bun, wearing a worn cashmere robe that didn't quite mask the exhaustion in her face. "Rowan." Her voice cracked with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" I met her eyes with calm precision. "We need to talk. About the trust. About the house. About all of it." She hesitated. Her hand gripped the edge of the door tighter. "You shouldn't be here. Mom doesn't want." "I'm not asking permission," I said, and I stepped past her into the foyer. The air inside was different. Heavier. Dimmer. The elegant lighting that always glowed from custom sconces was off. A few pieces of furniture were missing. The vintage mirror by the staircase, the console table in the front hall. "You've already started selling things," I said quietly, hoping no one would notice. Leora closed the door behind me and let out a breath. "You don't understand." "No, I do understand. I met with Alden Crest yesterday. I know about the refinancing. I know about the withdrawals. I know about the scam you and Mom fell for." Her face went pale. "You shouldn't have gotten involved," she whispered. "I was involved," I snapped. "You just didn't want me to know it. You tried to cut me out of the family, while leaving me legally responsible for the family's destruction. You think I wouldn't find out?" From the hallway a soft voice called, "Is someone here?" Our mother emerged from the living room slowly, like someone who had aged 20 years since I last saw her. Meredith Sinclair had once been a vision of designer tailoring and immaculate grooming. Now she looked thin, her silk robe hanging loosely off her shoulders, her cheekbones sharp and colorless. She stopped when she saw me. Her mouth opened, then closed. "You have no right." "I have every right," I said. "Especially since I'm the only thing standing between this family and bankruptcy." Silence stretched between us. I turned back to Leora. "You mortgaged this house twice, drained your 401k and dumped it all into a fake real estate fund." "We didn't know it was fake," she shot back, voice cracking. "They had offices, contracts, professional brochures. And now you're $800,000 in the hole with 60 days until foreclosure," I finished for her. I could see the tremble in her hands. She sat down on the bottom stair like her legs could no longer hold her up. "We were trying to fix things," she murmured. "Zane's tuition, Mom's medical bills." "Don't," I said. "Don't turn this into a tragedy about how hard it's been. You made these choices while lying to me, excluding me and pretending I didn't belong. But you had no problem leaving me legally exposed." Mom hadn't said a word. She stood there, hands clasped in front of her robe, like a statue made of shame. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally asked her. She didn't meet my eyes. "Your father set it up. Years ago. He said, if anything ever went wrong, you were the one to trust." The words landed harder than I expected. "So your solution," I said, my voice cold, "was to ignore me until you needed to save yourselves?" So she said nothing. I took out the file folder from my bag and dropped it on the hall table. "This is everything. The debts. The foreclosure timeline. The options. I could walk away right now and let the house go to the bank. Let the trust dissolve. Let you two learn what rock bottom really looks like." Leora looked up at me wide-eyed. "You wouldn't." "I could," I said. "But I won't. Not because I owe you anything. Not because you deserve it. But because this house was Dad's. And he believed in me. Finally, Mom's voice broke through, small, unfamiliar, and shaking. What happens now? I looked between them, my jaw set. Now, I said. How I take control. The silence that followed my words was heavy, the kind of silence that swells in your ears until it's all you can hear. I could feel their unease thick in the air. And maybe for a second I let them sit in it. Because for the first time in years I wasn't the one scrambling for approval. I wasn't the one explaining myself at Thanksgiving, biting my tongue at family dinners, or pretending my accomplishments didn't count just because they didn't come with a country club membership. This time they were the ones in free fall. And I was holding the rope. I'll help, I said finally. But this doesn't come for free. Leora blinked. You mean money? I mean everything, I said. If I'm stepping in, I'm setting the rules. Financial, personal, emotional, all of it. And if either of you so much as rolls your eyes, I'm out. Is that clear? They both nodded a little too quickly. I'm assuming you have no plan in place, I continued. No exit strategy. No idea how to stop the bleeding. I've been talking to a guy, Leora began. Stop, I cut in. If you say one more word about another guy, I swear I'll walk out right now. She shut her mouth. I pulled out my notebook and placed it on the coffee table. First thing, I'm halting the foreclosure process. That buys us time. Second, I'm consolidating your debts under my control. All credit lines. All accounts. I'll negotiate with the creditors and set a payment plan. Mom looked up hesitant. What will they say? What if they don't agree? They'll agree, I said flatly. Because someone's finally talking to them like an adult. And the house? She asked, voice trembling. I met her gaze. If you want to keep this house, things are going to change. Starting today. I slid a sheet of paper across the table. It was blank, but the symbolism was sharp. This is where we write the new terms of our relationship. Terms? Leora asked. Yes, I said. Because I'm not here to play fairy godmother. I'm here to manage a crisis you created. And if I'm going to rebuild what you nearly destroyed, I want full control, like I have at work. They exchanged nervous glances. From now on, I continued, every purchase over $500 gets my sign-off. No new accounts. No hidden expenses. You'll both take a basic financial literacy course and you'll meet with me weekly to go over your budgets. No excuses. No exceptions. And if we don't agree? Mom asked. Then I don't help, I said simply. And you'll lose the house before the next season's flowers bloom. There was a long pause. Then slowly Meredith nodded. Okay. Okay, Leora echoed. But I wasn't done. One more thing, I said. You're both getting jobs. Leora's mouth dropped open. What? You heard me, I said. No more charity luncheons. No more waiting for someone else to solve it. You want this house. You earn it. Mom looked stricken. Rowan, I haven't worked in 30 years. What would I even do? Figure it out, I said. You can start by calling that overpriced boutique you spend half your money at. I'm sure they need holiday staff. The look on her face was a mix of disbelief and humiliation. But I didn't flinch. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. And finally, they were going to learn what it meant to live in the real world. I closed my notebook and stood. I'll be back tomorrow with a list of your debts, contacts, and a job leads packet for each of you. In the meantime, don't spend a single cent, understand? They nodded again like chastened schoolgirls. I walked to the door, paused, then turned back. And for the record? I said. I don't care what the neighbors think. I care about whether you survive this mess with any dignity left. So let's get to work. By the end of the first week, the tension in the Sinclair household could be sliced with a butter knife. I had returned every day, laptop in tow, spreadsheets open, emails flying. I set up a makeshift command center in the dining room where I used to do my homework as a teenager. Now it was covered in debt statements, payment schedules, and lists of every unnecessary subscription and luxury service they'd been hemorrhaging money into for years. Victoria, sorry Mom, had canceled exactly none of them before I stepped in. Meal delivery boxes. Designer Candle of the Month clubs. A premium wine subscription service that delivered $300 cases of Bordeaux that neither of them even knew how to pronounce. Cancel. I said. And I made them do it by phone on speaker while I listened. It wasn't about the money. It was about the shift. The uncomfortable, unavoidable truth that their lives were no longer powered by appearances. They were powered by discipline. Leora, for her part, spent most of her time sulking in yoga pants, half-heartedly scrolling job boards while complaining about the lighting in the house. "Do I really need to apply for some receptionist job at a dentist's office?" she whined on day 4. "You need to apply for every job that pays money," I said. "And stop filtering by remote and creative only. You're not curating a lifestyle. You're surviving a collapse." She rolled her eyes. I didn't blink. Mom took longer to crack. For the first few days she refused to say the word job. Instead, she referred to the part-time position I found for her at a local boutique as volunteering with benefits. "No," I told her flatly. "You're an employee now. You clock in. You take direction. You answer to someone other than your own reflection." "I don't think I'm cut out for this kind of work," she sniffed, brushing invisible lint from her cardigan. "Retail is so transactional." "That's the point," I said. "You made this transactional. You gambled with the family's future and lost. Now you're earning every dollar back the hard way." Still, I could see the strain building behind their forced compliance. They were used to living on a pedestal, not performing under pressure. So I made the pressure louder. I set up automatic bill payments, stripped their credit cards to minimal limits, and personally approved every transaction over $100. Every Wednesday at 5 p.m., we had a budget meeting. Every Friday morning they had to report their hours worked and expenses logged. At first they thought I was joking. By week 2 they understood I was not. The first budget review was brutal. $287 for a single dinner at Larkspur? I asked, raising my eyebrow at Leora. She blinked. It was Derek's birthday. "You can buy him a balloon and a sandwich next year," I cut in. "Because until you're out of debt, birthdays are not fine dining events." Mom chimed in defensively. She was just trying to maintain appearances. "Our reputation is dead," I snapped. "You can either bury it with dignity or dig it up and let it rot in public. Your choice." That shut them up. By week 3 they were both working, part-time hourly mundane jobs they would have sneered at months ago. Leora in reception at a dental office. Mom behind the counter folding scarves and smiling through gritted teeth at women she used to gossip with over champagne. They were miserable. And it was working. It wasn't about breaking them. It was about resetting them. Their old lives had been built on illusions. Credit cards, social standing, quiet contempt for people like me who worked long hours instead of planning garden parties. No. They were living my world. And for the first time in years they were starting to respect it. By the time month 2 rolled around, the transformation was visible. Not just on paper but in posture, in tone, in the way they looked at me when I walked through the front door. The numbers were improving. Fully. Debt balances were shrinking. The foreclosure had been paused. Their spending had become cautious. Hesitant. Honest. But something else had shifted too. Something harder to quantify. Respect. They didn't say it. Not at first. But I saw it in how they no longer questioned me when I adjusted the budget. I saw it in how Leora started taking initiative, bringing receipts to our meetings before I even asked. I saw it in how Mom began asking questions instead of pretending to already know everything. And I felt it one evening when I walked into the house to find the dining room spotless, the spreadsheet already pulled up and both of them sitting, waiting. That had never happened before. We went through the numbers like usual. Rent, groceries, minimum payments, savings allocation. Yes, savings. I had them putting away $50 each a week. It wasn't much. But it was more than zero. When we finished, I started packing up my laptop, expecting another quiet goodbye and awkward silence. But Mom didn't move. "Rowan," she said. I looked up. She wasn't wearing makeup. No pearls. Just a soft gray sweater and eyes that looked suddenly very, very tired. "I owe you an apology." I froze. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking slightly where they rested in her lap. "I was wrong," she said, "about you. About your work. About everything, really." I didn't speak. I didn't trust myself to yet. For years I thought appearances were everything. That status, perception, that it was all we had. But I see now that I traded reality for a fantasy. And when you didn't fit into that fantasy, I pushed you out. I judged you for not playing along. And I convinced myself that meant you were the problem. I stared at her. At this woman who had spent a decade making me feel small, less than inconvenient. And now she looked so human. I treated you like a disappointment, she continued. But it was me. I was the one who failed this family. I swallowed the knot in my throat. Leora was quiet beside her, but I could see the tears brimming in her eyes. I had no idea how hard you worked, she said softly. How much you accomplished. I believed Mom. I thought if you weren't living like us, then maybe you weren't doing as well. And that made me feel better. Because it kept you comfortable, I said, my voice low. If I was struggling, it meant your choices were validated. She nodded, shame clouding her expression. I'm sorry. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable this time. It felt clean, like something had been rinsed away. I leaned back in the chair, took a breath, and finally said, "Thank you. I didn't expect either of you to say that." "You deserve it," Mom said. "And more." "No," I said. "I don't need more. Just this. Just honesty." There was a pause. Then I added, "But we're not done. The house isn't safe yet. You still have months of payments ahead. And habits don't change overnight." "I know," Mom said. "But we're learning." I nodded. And for the first time in years I believed her. 6 months after the first foreclosure notice, the Sinclair house was no longer in danger. The mortgage had been renegotiated. Credit card balances were down to manageable levels. The boutique had offered Mom a permanent role managing inventory, and Leora was now training to become an office coordinator at the dental practice. They still complained sometimes about long hours, sore feet, spreadsheets, and the budget I made them stick to. But they did it. Every week. Without skipping. They didn't ask for extensions. They didn't dodge calls. They showed up. And for the first time in our lives, we were functioning like something dangerously close to a team. The strangest part? I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. And sometimes when I saw the way Mom looked at me now, not as the daughter she couldn't fix, but as the woman who held the whole structure together, I felt something even rarer. Peace. Of course, there were still scars. Mom's reputation never fully recovered. Word spread through her charity circles about her part-time job, and a few longtime friends quietly backed away. The garden club didn't renominate her for their spring committee. Her phone stopped ringing for lunches. At first it crushed her. Then she stopped pretending to care. "People remember the cocktail dresses," she said one day, folding sweaters behind the counter, "but they forget the cost." As for Leora, her wedding, originally planned as a grand New England estate event, was scaled down to a modest gathering in a small vineyard with close friends. No ice sculptures. No custom floral arch. Just vows. Real ones. I wasn't just invited. I was maid of honor. At the reception she pulled me aside. "I still feel like I'm paying off a debt to you I'll never really clear." "You don't have to," I told her. "That was never the point." Then came the moment I hadn't expected. Mom found me in the kitchen 2 days later, during our weekly financial meeting. She handed me a manila envelope. No label, no warning. Inside, a copy of the revised Sinclair Family Trust. She'd transferred control fully and formally. Not just out of obligation but out of belief. "You're the steward now," she said. "You've earned that. And I trust you." I stared at the paperwork, then at her. Not with triumph. Not with resentment. Just quiet understanding. We were different now. All of us. They had learned to live within reality. I had learned to stop apologizing for living above their expectations. And the house. Still standing. Still safe. Still ours. The same one I was once locked out of. Now I held the keys.